first of all, one can see the importance of being a light to oneself. It doesn't mean to cling to some idea that one has discovered or experienced a light in oneself. But that comes about by understanding fully, deeply what awareness means. I'm going to talk it over with you first, and then please question. Let's talk it over, have a dialogue together. I don't think awareness can be practiced. If you practice it, then it becomes mechanical. Right? That's simple enough. It's like a man who plays the piano. If he practices it all day long, he might practice the wrong notes. So, the awareness implies no practice at all. It is free observation, without any distortion, without any bias, without any prejudice, without any conclusion. Free observation and exposition. Not only observation of the world around one, and also from the outer observation move inward. Because unless one understands the outer very carefully, merely starting with the inner awareness may be distorting, may be illusory, may be non-factual. So whereas observing the outer, your reactions to the outer, whether you are a Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, British, American, whatever that is, so if you are conditioned, as most of us are, and if you look at the outer with those conditioned mind, then you can't observe freely. So awareness implies that one is conditioned, and from that conditioning we have created the world. The moral, ethical, cultural, political, religious world, as well as the psychological world, right? We are conditioned by our culture, by the society in which we live, which we have created, and we are conditioned by the religions, by the priests, by the family, the tradition of war as the tradition of God, as the tradition of rituals. We are conditioned by the name, by the connotation attached to that name. All this is a form of conditioning. Now, just a minute. So the human being conditioned, beginning, and then he conditions it. He conditions himself through greed. And then he creates a society which helps him to be greedy. Right? This is simply logical. So, it is an interaction between the outer and the inner. It is not outer is different from the inner. It's interaction, constant ebb and flow. Clear, isn't it? So, we're asking, is it possible to be aware of one's conditioning? Totally. Both the conditioning of the conscious mind as well as deep-rooted conditioning of which one may not be aware at all. And we're going to deal with both. Please, I'm talking because now, so as to go into it, you're going to discuss it with me afterwards. I will stop it after a certain time. So, is it possible for a human being, without a motive, if a human being has a motive to examine and be free of that conditioning, that very motive is born out of his past conditioning. I wonder if you see that. We'll discuss it. If I have a motive to be free of my conditioning, because I have pain or fear or this or that, the motive is born out of my conditioning. And so the motive dictates how I observe my conditioning, right? You see the importance of this. So I must observe my conditioning, whatever it is, good, bad, indifferent, mediocre, and excellent, whatever it is. I must examine it, look at it without any motive. Because I see the logic of it, the reason of it. Because where I have a motive, that motive is the outcome of my conditioning, and that motive dictates further conditioning, modifying it or changing it a little bit here and there, but that motive being born out of my conditioning operates on further conditioning. That's clear. So is it possible for me to observe without any motive? See what we are doing, going step by step into it. Is it possible for me, for one, to observe without any motive? If one sees the logic of it, the truth of it, that is, a motive born out of my conditioning still maintains the conditioning. Do you and I see the truth of it? When I do, the motive disappears. I don't have struggle against it. Entendu? Right? If I have a motive to be free of my conditioning, that motive is dictated by the desire to be free of my trap in order to be something else. To be something else is born out of my conditioning. To be something else is the reaction to my conditioning, dictated, directed by the motive. That's clear. May I go on? Huh? Please, we are going to discuss this with me. Have a dialogue with me. So, one asks, is it possible to be free of motive? All motives, not just one motive. And that is only possible if I see the movement of a motive. Right? How the motive is born, what its actions are, what its responses are, how that very motive curtails, limits further examination. Therefore, seeing the truth of that, the motive, all motives disappear. I wonder if you see this. We're going to discuss this together. Have a dialogue. So, now, the very fact having no motive gives freedom of observation. Right? Right? Now I observe, one observes. That is, having no motive, I'm becoming aware of my consciousness, right? Of one's consciousness. So, in becoming aware without motive, and therefore no choice in the observation of my conditioning, because the motive dictates the choice. I wonder if you see all this. Huh? We'll discuss it. So there is no choice in observation. Observation then is freedom to look. The motive is the factor of the past. Motive is the past, right? The motive is the observer. Without the motive, there is no observer. Are we getting something of this? Yeah? You're following? So, mind is free to observe without any choice, without any motive, because I see a choice is the outcome of my conditioning, motive is the outcome of another form of conditioning. So, seeing the truth of that, there is freedom to observe without the observer. Huh? We'll go into it later. So there is an observation only. No correction, no direction, no suppression, they're just observation. I observe, there is an observation, not I observe, there is an observation of authority, one of our conditioning. Authority implies fear, conformity, imitation, obedience, following somebody. Much more is involved in that authority. Authority of one's own experience, authority of one's own knowledge, or the authority that has been imposed through society and so on and so on. So, in the observation of authority, that is the art of observation, please follow this. The art of observation is to see that authority has a certain place. Doctors, medicine, technology. But authority has no place in the field of which we call the psyche. Right? I have put, art means, as we said at the beginning, to put everything in its right place. Right? See the beauty of it, sir. To put everything where it belongs, not through choice, but through observation. There are better roadbeds, and therefore they're going faster, more noise. So authority has its right place. I observed it. There is an observation of it. And there is fear. We're taking few of the contents of our consciousness, of which we are becoming aware. Fear has its right place, which is the fear to protect the instrument, the organism, and has no other place. You understand? Pleasure. And how thought pursues pleasure. went into all that. And what is love? What is sorrow? We went into all that. So, is there a possibility of being aware the whole of it at a single observation and not take fragment by fragment? Because they are all interrelated. They are not separate. They are not fragments which exist by themselves. They are all interrelated, acting upon each other. So in this observation, is it possible to observe totally the whole movement? Do you understand? It is possible only when we understand the meaning and the significance of thought. Thought, experience, knowledge, stored up in the brain as memory, and the action of that memory, thought. So again, the art of giving thought in its right place and no other. Now, we are asking, is it possible to be aware of this total movement as a single unit? Or must you go through fragmentary observation of the fragments? That's one point. Second point is, can the conscious mind investigate the unconscious, the deeper layers of consciousness? You understand my question? That's part of observation. That's part of being totally, completely aware. As most of us are educated to live on this superficial conscious level, we find it awfully difficult or impossible to open up, not to a psychologist or psychotherapeutic, to ourselves, to open up everything. Because again, if we have understood fear, then it is possible to open. You understand? If you have gone into the question of pleasure, love, suffering, death, then the whole carved, the whole hidden things are exposed. You don't have to go after them, but they come out. Have you understood any of this? Right? So having no motive, there being no direction, and so no choice, there is a total awareness. You get complete awareness. Why the Russians are behaving that way? Why the British, the Americans, the Hindus, why religions are this way? Because you have observed the outer very carefully, how you are trapped by the gurus, because you want to find out something. You are eager, when one is very young and fresh and innocent and wanting to enthusiastically find out, there comes along some man who says, I'll tell you all about it, and you are caught. To be aware of all that. Which means to be aware of your desire being, we went to will and so on, desire with its illusions, which is to follow somebody who is going to give you the light. To practice something, hoping thereby that will have this extraordinary delight or ecstasy, joy. Ecstasy, as we said, is a state of mind which is beyond the self. So, both consciously as well as deep down, there is a total awareness. Right? And from that total awareness in which there is no choice, there is complete action. To act without a motive, which is out of compassion. You get it? Which is out of clarity. And that compassion, clarity, gives the skill to operate, to function, to act. This is total awareness.